Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is the last day of May, May 31st, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we have Jyunmi, Andy, Beth, and I'm Brian. And we want to do every other Friday thereabouts, we like to do a review. We like to pick a top or a product, service, a software, an app, anything like that we feel like is AI related. And then just do a little bit more of a deep dive, not just do a cursory glance over, but actually jump in a little bit into the particular product and give you our honest review of it. Does it fall flat? We've had some where we've been like, wah, this really isn't nailing it. And we don't think it's going to, right? Like we can kind of say like, we don't think it's going to really reach anything. Today, we're actually talking about a very popular product or name, which would be Google Gemini. And so I would imagine most of our audience has heard of Google Gemini, but if you haven't, they've gone through a couple of renames. They had Google Bard, which was last year. It was Bard came from Shakespeare or something. I always thought it was a really weird name. It doesn't roll off the lips at all. There was Google Duet, which wasn't really after Bard, but was sort of concurrent with it and what Duet could do. Anyway, they've relabeled and rebranded to Gemini. And now, sort of like Copilot with Microsoft, they use that term all over the place. So now it's like, what can you do with Gemini in this product, right? And so Gemini now is becoming synonymous with Google's AI tool, if you will. So that's kind of where we are. But today, yeah, absolutely, Cindy. Thank you. Cindy was saying she loves the reviews. Thanks for doing them. So today we wanted to just do Gemini we'd be all over the place. So we wanted to focus today and say, okay, no, actually let's do Gemini for Workplace. So just real quick on that, like Google Workplace is like saying you have Microsoft 365. At scale, we use Google Workplace. I would call us a Google shop, right? We use Google Docs and we use Google Sheets and we do use Zoom. We don't use Google Meet, but I kind of suspect that might change soon, although my coworkers are definitely pushing back on me on that prediction. But we can talk about that for sure. So, it's a way that people interact. It's more the business side of it or whatever. So, okay, Google came out and they said Gemini could do all these things. Okay, well, where's the truth? Where are the lies? What could you actually do with it today? Like, how is it helpful if you were to use Google Gemini for Workspace today? And then we'll talk about where we think it's going, where we can kind of see the trend lines, and also where it's happened before, where Google has said these big, bold things, and either they're never coming, either it was a very highly polished, edited video, which they've gotten in trouble for before, or they're showing us stuff that's clearly 6 months away and we kind of see that and we're like, oh, it's coming and I guess it'll be great when it gets there, but it's not there yet. And so what? So that's sort of the overall of this. Now we'll go through the different pieces and parts of Google Workspace. And that's like Gmail and Slides and Sheets, which is the spreadsheets, and Google Meet, which is like the Zoom, right? And then Gemini itself, which is more of the LLM. So there's lots of parts and pieces to start with. But I've talked enough. Let me sort of throw it over to you, Beth, because we were just saying before we were going live, you're like, hey, I haven't touched this as much before we decided to do this show and we were researching for it. And you were saying that you were actually surprised by some of the abilities. So maybe that's a great place to start the conversation.
Absolutely. So the first place that I went to was Gmail, because I think that Gmail is an important, let me see if I can share. Gmail is something I'm in all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have been frustrated with Gmail in terms of writing. I don't find Gemini in these inside Workspace that helpful as a writer. But if you can see, the search that I did was just really simple. Like you can summarize email chains and that kind of stuff. You can do all of those kinds of things. Like, what is the next action step that I have? What's happened already? But this was literally, I did not do it for our news show, but everyone can know that I will definitely be doing it for the next news show. I said, show me all AI newsletters from Wednesday, May 29th. And it pulled these. Now, all of these are not necessarily AI newsletters, but holy crap, this took like 4 seconds, right? Like that was an amazing thing. I also went with one of their examples in terms of creating a presentation. So, sustainable transportation, navigating the road ahead. The first slide that it did was the benefits of going electric. The automatic slides seem to only create slides with text on the left and an image. And boy, is this fascinating. The electric car, the benefit of going electric. Apparently, in Google's future, the electricity is mostly around the wheel hubcaps.
Right.
And it sort of deforms your car just slightly. But this is also like, that's not a problem to throw in a better graphic, right? This is just giving you a starting point, creating this whole presentation. This is a 5-slide presentation. I certainly wouldn't give it this way, but this again took me maybe 5 minutes.
Can I ask a clarification on this, Beth? So
Yeah.
in my experience and from what I understood, we know that, let me back. Copilot, Microsoft Copilot can create full slide decks like Beautiful can and some other Beautiful.ai can. But I was under the impression, and I have not been able to get Google Slides to create more than throwing an image or asking certain things. Did you say, or did I miss, did you automatically create or did Gemini create those slides for you?
Gemini created the slides one at a time. So I wasn't able to ask to give me a full slide deck on this presentation, right, but I could then say, okay, give me a next thing. This, right, it doesn't understand the slide layouts, right? So like you can go into format or slide and change the layout, put the picture in a different place, that kind of stuff. This, I actually asked for a big number slide with the number of with the average amount saved by owning an electric vehicle compared to a gas-powered vehicle. And in the format, there should just be a really big number and then an explanation on the bottom. So I got, again, a slide with an image and this time text on the right. But still, right, one of the reasons that like Gamma and Beautiful and those sorts of things are nice is that they can give you a starting point and then you can modify that. This isn't quite like that, but if you're starting from scratch, this is actually using Google to go and research that stuff, and you can go in and see where the sources are for the content, then it's added for you.
And I want to keep on slides for just a second if we could, because because I think it'll be easier to talk about these one at a time, and then instead of going all through them, each one of us. But this is a good example of where I'm not really sure. I mean, it is up for conversation, right? Is this Gemini falling down, or is this like, you know what though? But honestly, I never could add a very quick photo to a slide deck. So like right now, you kind of showed it, Beth. I can ask Gemini on the sidebar for a topic outline. It's not going to create the slides for me, but it's going to give me, it'll use Gemini to create an outline. Then I can go and say, I like that outline. And then I can go create slide 1 and I can say yada, yada, yada. And then I can ask Gemini, like, what would be some more content? I have a header, but what would be some more content? And Gemini will be Gemini and will give me a little bit. And then I can say, what would be, I need a picture of, I'm looking at mine. Yours is cards. Mine's a bag of candy that it created. Right. And so like, I need a bag of candy to help solidify this idea. Right. And it'll do its best to do it. That's good AI. Where it seems, and this is an interesting overall theme of, does it disappoint because other tools like a Copilot or a Beautiful will create an entire slide deck and it's beautiful. Like that's why it's called that. It's and this has been that way for over a year. So there are some really good tools for this, but are we disappointed with Gemini because this is all it can do? Like, the way I guess I look at this is like, yeah, but I couldn't do this 6 months or maybe a little bit more. Like I couldn't do this 6 months ago. And it definitely seems like there's a trend towards it's going to get better. I feel like we're going to be able to create full slide decks. I feel like it's going to integrate even more into my Gmail and stuff like that. So if I need to pull in, I can't today, but it seems reasonable that if I needed to pull in my topic outline from a Google Doc as a starting point, so I could have started on a Google Doc, had Gemini help me really work out that, because it's gonna be easier in a doc than it is on a sidebar here. And then I could have really, really worked that out and then go to slides and say, great, I have my template. So use that document and populate the slides, and now I'll go in and refresh it. Like, can't do that today, but we can kind of see it coming. I don't know.
Yeah, Brent. I think my main takeaway, or I should say my initial takeaway, is this release is not for us. We're not the ideal customer for this.
Meaning us, the show, the cohort,
us, the show, our sphere, right? People who are in AI, been using AI for the last year or two. I think this is a dip your toe in the water for people who have not used it at all. Mm-hmm. Like, just imagine if you've never used any AI whatsoever, but your day-to-day lives in Google Workspace, and now you have this thing where you can ask these questions. Some of the and one of the things I wanted to highlight was the suggestions. The suggestions work fairly well, and that's obviously on purpose. But when I went to more, it brought out a bunch of suggestions about teach me how. And this was like in spreadsheet and stuff like that. And I liked that. Like, if I didn't know how to do formulas and other components of Workspace, or have a deeper understanding of how to use the application more effectively, Gemini is a great, little tutorial. It's a great way to get a little deeper in there. And that's all because they're predefined suggestions and things like that. So I think if you've never used AI, this will be a great way for you to go, oh, hey, can I find all the emails that I got that I'm talking about Project X? And then it'll pull it up. Now, I even asked Gemini when I asked this, like, oh, pull all the emails that are AI in film related. Not just AI and not just film, but AI in film. And it did a pretty good job of grabbing a bunch of emails. And then I asked it, why did you make these choices? And then it explained, hey, it's in these subject lines, in these, these are the highlighted keywords, things like that. So basic explanation. But that's a great way to get started in using AI in your everyday. So I think that's what the focus is. The focus is, here's a little bit of capability, and you've never used it. Only 7% of us do in the US, right? And give it a shot. And for those little things, for those entry-level things, I think it'll impress. Now, for us, I think it's like you said, okay, so in 6 months, this will probably be really useful for me. I have other AI tools that will do my process so far.
And that begs the question, Jimmy, or to everybody, like, so should we be disappointed? No, listen, Google has had some major missteps. We could talk about that, right? I mean, for sure. And we could talk the rest of the show on that. So I get that. But is it a bad thing that Google puts out what Gemini can do today? Because to your point, Jimmy, like, if I'm just working in Workspace, as I go through these and I can share a lot of these, there's a lot of helpful tools that work right now. It's not perfect. It's not. And that brings me back to the whole idea of, like, I've talked about this before, but if you've never looked up Louis C.K.'s, he was on Conan years ago, and he talks about why he's a comedian, if you know who that is. He talks about airplane Wi-Fi. Just Google that or YouTube that, right? And the whole bit is that he talks about how, like, this is the way of the world. We went from, growing up with me, I went from, as a kid, people chain smoking from LA to New York in the seat behind me. And the only way you were going to watch a movie of any sort was on like a box thing that was usually 19 rows ahead of me. So you're trying to watch something this small or whatever. And his whole point is, like, then we got Wi-Fi on planes. Then you were able to like stream things on your phone. And the minute the Wi-Fi goes out, everybody loses their mind on the plane. They're like, this is ridiculous. This is like, I can't believe this doesn't work at 30,000 feet or whatever. And it's just the whole idea, right? It's the whole idea about how quickly we adapt to this new normal. And I think to like something like, okay, spell check. Well, there wasn't 7 different companies coming out with spell check. Yeah, maybe you have your Grammarly's, which were like an advanced spell check, but there was just spell check. Like, Google had spell check, like Gmail had spell check. And we thought, hey, that's nice. I'm awful at spelling. So spell check's fantastic, right? But I wasn't like Oh, but Copilot spell check not only shows me the word, but highlights it in blue and shows me the deeper meaning and the subtle context of where I messed up in Greek and why I didn't understand the root prefix of that word. I'm kind of disappointed in Gemini's spell check. It just changes the word for me, right? It's weird.
Well, one thought about this is not necessarily the capabilities, which I know the Louis C.K. bit you're talking about, and you just kind of have to wait for it to get better. But I'm thinking, hold on a second. I want us to go back to the announcement Google and OpenAI made. So we've I think in the last week or so, you saw OpenAI connect your custom or your ChatGPT to your data. So, and then we know agents are coming. So it's not that much of a stretch that I can use a custom GPT to create a slide, and that's connected to my Google Drive to build the slides. So why would I need Gemini to do that? Why would I need any of these tools when I can build all this stuff with my agent? So I was like, there's kind of weird competing forces where you have Copilot, you have Workspace, but then you have everything that if these custom GPTs connect to everything, see everything, hear everything, have memory, search online, then technically you can build everything inside and just push it to the various systems. Sure, it's connected to my data now, but it only makes sense that I can now just create it in the GPT and create that. Like there are custom GPTs that can create you presentations now. So that it isn't a stretch to be doing that. So Excel or Sheets, Word, or Docs, or PowerPoint, or presentations, it doesn't matter because you can do that somewhere else. So I just thought it's like, why do I need to have all these tools? Because I already have one that can it's connected and I can do everything there. And we all know, like, even use some of my clients who use Copilot, it's just not up to snuff when you go to something like a ChatGPT 4.0. It's
or
just
Gamma.
Or Gemini 1.5. It's not the same. So you're like, wait a minute, why don't I just use the actual better version and connect it through? But you're right, Jimmy, it's for people who may not use this every day.
Yes.
But I'm going to give you a
there's
different
another option.
case. I'm going to give you a case where I use custom GPTs, and I use a very particular and well-programmed one or several to generate content. But the output of those things is now in a long list of threads in my GPT account, in my OpenAI account, and I don't have any easy way to find what's in that. So it's not a very good repository of the outputs for me. So what I do routinely as a practiced user of OpenAI and of Google Workspace is I will copy and I'll put it into a Google Doc. And I only take the outputs, the portions of the output in that thread that are the final result that I want, and I put them into a Google Doc. Now, I have a bunch of different things from different custom GPTs in a single Google Doc. And over here on the sidebar, I have Gemini. So I say, Gemini, take all of this in this document, reorganize it, and put it into this format. And I want you to, produce something that's actually presentable out of that. Bingo.
But couldn't Done. You? But we saw the agentic features that eventually will allow you to do that within, like ChatGPT. It's nearly
I haven't seen that.
No,
we say that, and yeah, there are agents that will do that, all those steps for you. But where's the document going to be stored? I think you're missing the point that Google Workspace is a database of all of your productive output. I use it that way. I don't use Word docs anymore. I don't put them on my desktop or into my local file storage. I put them into Google Drive, right? So Google Drive now has an omnipresent assistant in docs and sheets and elsewhere. And so we've talked about this on the show before. What's special about this and why I'm not disappointed is that for the vast, huge number of people that use Google tools in their app workspaces, those things are now AI assisted, just like it's true for the Microsoft ecosystem. If your company uses Microsoft, you've got Copilot to do that as well. But now Google has the very same thing. So I think this is a really great addition. Now, one of the things that's curious to me is, I can't select right now which of the Google models, whether advanced or 1.5 Pro, is actually being used when I invoke Gemini on the side panel. I think that's coming, right? Eventually, that feature will be available. I'll be able to select from among the kinds of tools that I find most useful. But I've used this just very recently in the manner that I described. And, it didn't obviate the need to use OpenAI and custom GPT and all of the incredible tools that are available in the GPT store, so to speak. But it did finalize and, centralize all of my work product. And that's what Google's doing for me.
I think I'd have to push back there because we see the connector. We all have the connectors now, I think, to Google Drive and to OneDrive. And I think SharePoint's coming. And, what I saw with when I'm using with Microsoft Copilot and Power Automate, that's specifically in Microsoft. It's like, okay, it's not going to be hard for OpenAI if in a custom GPT to do exactly what you're talking about, if it already has access to my data, which I don't know if people use the Gemini connector to, at Gmail, at your Drive, because that's there. So it's not like the next.
So let me politely push back on that. So let's say that I use connector and I produce some output in OpenAI and I say, okay, put this in a new Google Doc. Great. Now I go over and I open the Google Doc.
But why would you need to open the Google Doc?
Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I go
why wouldn't you open it? Why wouldn't you open it in the custom GPT?
Well, because I'm basically in a query response mode in GPT, and I don't really have any place to have the final work product. Do you? I mean, I'm going to go over and open if it's over there in Google, unless it's just a temporary, like a temporary storage kind of thing over here in Google Drive. But I'm going to print something from the Google Doc. And maybe that's just my habit, and you'll find a way to do that. You'll be able to print from OpenAI, but right now I can't do that, right? There's not a printer button over there. So I go over to the Google Doc, and what I'm saying is, now that I've got it over in Google Doc, now I'm going to work there, and I also have Gemini, and Gemini is very competent. It can do comprehensive AI authoring and organization steps that I don't need to go back. I don't need to be bouncing back and forth between different tabs to do that. I'm right there in the doc.
And I think that's, when I listen to the two of you, Karl, I understand what you're saying, but I think to a certain extent, if you look at my screen right now, for anybody that's not, I'm just using Gemini, literally gemini.google.com. But because I'm using the extension for Workplace, I can absolutely say, what was the last email I received? And because it's connected to Workplace, Gemini immediately goes and searches and says, this is the last email, which was the fake one I made for today's demos and stuff. So that's why it's pulling it up. And then I asked a more complicated question. Did I create any Google Slides yesterday? It wasn't able to do that, right? So there's a limitation. You're like, oh, well, that would be something nice, but that's a nicety, right? I mean, I hope it gets there someday, because that's something I might ask. Like, help me summarize. I'll give you an example. We all use sort of Google on the backside of the Daily AI Show. We probably should have it even more organized. But Jimmy puts stuff in the drive and stuff. So for me to bounce into my Google Workspace in Gemini here and say, hey, did anybody on the team create any new docs yesterday? And it to say, yeah, Jyunmi did, and it's titled this, and this is what it is. And then I can immediately stay in Gemini and say, help me craft a response to that, because I want to respond back to Jyunmi on what he was working. That's a collaborative team effort, and I totally see that. Are we there today? No, I don't think so, because you can see where there's limitations. But I was able to easily come back and say, can you summarize my last Google document that I created? And in fact, it was able to do that. It gives me a nice little summary here. And then there's more that I can do, and there's a show more and stuff like that. So I think it is kind of what you're saying, Karl, but I kind of agree with Andy. Like, if I'm a Google shop, if I'm just like, if the Daily iShow team here, if we got our ducks in a row and we said, you know what, we're ripping the Band-Aid off. We're going to use Google Chat for instead of Slack. We're going to use Google Meet for all our internal meetings, and everything we do is going to be inside. We're all going to have 7 seats inside our team workspace, and we are going to utilize Gemini to its fullest extent. If we agreed to that, I bet you we would all of a sudden start to see all these other benefits. Where I actually think it's a problem with what you're saying, Karl, until we have this agentic or these agents that can go cross-platform, these agents that don't care where the data is because they connect and can easily bring it back. So whether it's in a document on my drive on my computer, on my wife's computer, on her laptop, or in the cloud somewhere, and it can easily bring all that together and mesh it together. And as the end user, I don't really see any different. It's just like, here's all your data, kind of like we were talking about yesterday. Then I totally see what you're talking about. But I would say Gemini because it's Google, and that's where my company is working.
And I think maybe it's just different use cases, but I stay completely away from any of those things. Literally stay away.
Well,
like, I don't touch. No, and it's even Microsoft too. If the only time I'll really need to, if I need to do something else for somebody else that I need to put in a doc, but like from a workflow perspective, I have not touched Gemini and I have not touched Copilot unless it's for a client. Personally, it's just not
right.
It doesn't make any sense, but maybe that's again just my workflow and what we're I guess it's personal preference, and I can't believe we actually talked about printing in I was like, hey, where did we print? I was like, what?
Do you not print anything?
My family's schedule and calendar is on the fridge. I have to print that out every week. I mean, that's a vital piece of paper in our house.
And Karl,
I don't have any.
By the way, you can print to a file.
You can print to a PDF. Yes, you can.
PDF. Yeah, good point.
And then upload it to your custom GPT as knowledge. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff. But my answer to Karl's question about why you would not stay in ChatGPT is because ChatGPT is informed by the whole conversation. And what Andy's example was taking bits and pieces of that to create a new piece of content that then he could start to iterate around. And it's really easy to forget that the whole conversation is how you got to that last piece. I was on a Rob Lennon office hours call yesterday, and we were testing a reasoning example. And he had before in that thread talked about what we were talking about. I believe it was representation reasoning. Sorry, we'll put it in the notes because I am not coming up with the thing. But I started a clean conversation. He had a whole bunch before, and our results with the same model were completely different. His failed, mine succeeded. Right. So that sort of thing is a reason to pull it out and start a new chat. And if you're going to do that, you might as well. If you're doing it from a bunch of different chats, you need to put it somewhere. So why not a Google Doc? But also then you could move to this other thing. It also doesn't take any of your allotment of GPT-4 or 4.0.
I want to maybe do a quick lightning round here because I want to stay true to what I said at the top of the show is let's go through and I want people who might be on the fence or actually have Google Workspace and are thinking about Gemini and whether it'd be valuable to them. I want you to walk away from this show having at least a decent understanding of what you can or can't do. So let's just do a bit of a lightning round. I won't stay on any one of these products too long. I have them up on the screen. So if you're listening to us on like a Spotify or Apple podcast, you might want to go check this episode out on YouTube, where you can, sort of watch and follow along on the screen. But right now I'm just on an untitled document and I wanted to keep it untitled. on document on here because right at the top, you see the Gemini help. Help me write meeting notes, email draft, calendar and events, and more. So on this next tab, you can see that I had it help me generate a fake email because I wanted to use it actually for this explanation. So what it'll do is it'll write the email and then there's a little like help me write here, suggest edits to it on the side. I can actually completely open up the side type, the Gemini sidebar as well and have that on the side during the whole thing. This goes for any of the products that you might have. You can always open up that sidebar. But also before it got to this point, it also asked me if I wanted to make any edits. It'll say stuff like, do you want to expand this or contract this, make it more concise? Are you happy with these edits? And I had to confirm that before it actually sort of put it or pasted it on the document as sort of quote unquote permanent, right? So there's a lot of different ways, but like that's just for the Google document. Then Beth already kind of talked about this with Gemini, where down here, here's the fake email at the top. I'm sorry, not Gemini, but Gmail is what I was trying to say. And then I had it write me a follow-up email. I gave it just a few words like, hey, can you tell them I'm interested and let's make a follow-up call? It gave me an email. I said, expand on that a little bit. And it gave me a longer email. And I was responding to myself, the emails from Brian to Brian here. But you can see at the bottom, if you're looking at this, it does the follow-up. And you can see where my note was. Thank them for the information to request a follow-up call next Tuesday at 10 a.m. And it pops that in, no problem. Well, it's a lot faster for me to just write this, whatever, 15 words and get this email and then hit expand and go, I'm happy with that and send it on its way. That's a great efficiency for me. I would totally use it. I have used that over and over again. Let's jump over really quick. This is probably my favorite. Sheets. Holy moly, what you're looking at, the color-coded amazement that you're looking at, if you see it on my screen right now, was completely created by Gemini. And let's just scroll to the top here. All I said was create a table of fake family expenses like food, gas, and entertainment for the month of May 2024. And what you're seeing on the left, complete with drop downs of the 3 categories that I said with subcategories on the right, along with drop downs for the dates and the dollar amount, as well as the description on the right. It created this in one shot. Guys, I do a daily budget. I wish mine might look this good. I'm going to go back now and make mine look this good. I have created a line item budget since 2017. Literally every single thing my family spends or takes in, in and out, expenses and revenue, I have a line item budget for. I started that a long time ago. And it takes time. It's an effort to do that. And what I'm seeing here with these AI tools is going to get easier and easier for me to extract good information, data analytics, like we were talking yesterday, but for my personal expenses, just for my family. Hey, did we spend more eating out this month? I'd like to compare May of this year to May of last year to see how inflation is affecting my family's eating out expenditures, right? That would be a normal thing to do as a family. And I can easily do that now by creating different formulas. So what are my top food expenses? I can't help with that. Okay, well, that sucks. That seems like an easy thing. But if I do a formula, like you were saying, Jimmy, it will actually create formulas for me and give me the result. So right here, this was the breakdown of transportation costs. It gave me the formula. And then it said the formula result is $220. That's the fake transportation cost, right? Again, can we do another one? Can we do another one? I tried to get it to sort by Mondays. I was like, hey, does it know which May date is a Monday? And it created the formula, but you notice here, there's no result to it. So it created a formula, but unless this had said Monday in the A column, it wasn't going to pull it. So there's ways to do formulas by that, obviously, and convert things or whatever, but it wasn't able to do a more complex formula like that. I think the Sheets thing is cool as heck, and I definitely see the value in it.
I agree with you. I think that that my takeaway would be that there are going to be some places, if you're using Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, there are going to be some places where it's just so easy because it's right there, and you're going to start to experiment with things that can be done very, very well in OpenAI or in other frontier models platforms. But it's right where we're currently working. Right. And by the way, I wanted to ask you, does your daughter submit expense reports? Like, do you have to?
Yes.
How does that work?
My daughter is 13, but she's had a job for almost 5 years now. So she gets paid by her parents, me and Amanda, for what she does. And yes, she does have to submit expense reports. This is a side note, but for any parent out there, if you are trying to teach your child about how to keep the old school checkbook, I highly, highly recommend the app Greenlight. That's just a plug, because it's freaking amazing if you're a parent, and wow, will it teach your child about all sorts of stuff. So yes, I do pull all that in, Andy. But that's maybe
great.
A little neurotic when it comes to that.
Very wonky, but I admire it.
Hey, listen,
I don't have that kind of influence or control over my family household.
It's not. It's about, you know what? It's like, it's the old adage. And then I'll move on here. Don't let your money tell you where it went, or tell your money where it went, not the opposite. I'm messing that up. There's a thing for that. So basically my whole thing is, if I force myself and my family to look at every single expense, you're much more likely to say like, ooh, I don't need to have that subscription. It's basically how I make sure that I don't overspend on AI subscriptions, because I see them come up in the budget and then I go, I can't spend $100 a month on this stupid AI tools. Some of them have got to go, and it's the budget that helps me do that. Hey, I know we're running short on time, so I just want to hit a few more of these super quick, but I'll make it short. Beth already talked about slides, so again, same idea, right? Very interesting, these photos, by the way. They don't look so much AI generated as they do pulled directly off of Google, because like the bags are like super worn and they're like in a different language, but maybe they are AI generated, but the bags look like they were like used as hacky sacks. I don't it's weird, but maybe
it doesn't look like good candy.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a well-used bag of candy that somebody never opened. I'm not really sure, but if it's AI, it's kind of interesting. So I won't really talk about slides. I think, there's limitations with slides. It's not as good as Copilot right now, but certainly better than not having an AI tool at all, for sure. When it comes to Google Docs, okay, this one was a big old fail, and I'm not sure why. I said, can you summarize the main documents here? And this is just a file folder from when I wrote a book on sugar addiction many years ago. And so I just used it as an example. And it says the first document in here is about AI-powered interactive learning experience platform. There's nothing in this folder that's about AI. It's about Google addiction. That's what it is. No, sugar addiction. So it was completely wrong. And I was like, I do not know where it's pulling this document from. It might be from the main drive, but it's not this folder. So then I was like, can you tell me specifically wherever it is in here? Can you summarize the file Sugar Avatar, which is this one right here in the upper right corner? I just picked it. And it's like, yeah, in this episode of the Daily AI Show, the hosts discuss AI advancements for 2024. And I was like, that's definitely not right. So it's pulling in documents, and this one, it didn't even give me a source up here. At least it did. It gave me a transcript and a source, but it's clearly not this folder. This makes it not so helpful. I guess if I was on the main Google Drive, like, I'm not going to do it because it's got my private stuff in it, but like my drive, I feel like it would do a better job. But the minute I went into a folder, Gemini lost its mind. It doesn't seem to understand that I have narrowed my scope to a folder. I don't know if there's ways to do it. I didn't play with it enough.
I found that when Gemini ran into that issue, you have to like recalibrate it.
Yeah.
So I ran into the exact same example that you ran into. It's like, why are you pulling this from somewhere else? This is not what we were talking about.
Where are you pulling this from?
So what I had to do to recalibrate was if you right click and open up your contextual menu for a particular file, you can ask Gemini. And then Gemini basically pulls that file in particular as a link to it. And then it starts talking about it again. So definitely a hurdle to work on. This is why it really should have that beta tag next to it. I didn't see any any kind of labeling like that, but it definitely has its hiccups.
It's the internal workings, because if you go into the AI studio and use Gemini on the back end, it's exactly the same thing, right?
Sure.
Like, you click file, you tell it the file that you want from your Google Drive. And if you want to talk about something that's not in your Google Drive, it uploads it to Google Drive so it can talk to you. So like, that connection exists. It's just not apparently worked out in the actual front facing Google Drive.
So as we sort of get to as we get to the end here, I do want to at least go ahead, Basha.
Cindy thinks maybe Google has a bias for the Daily AI Show, and we understand. Yes. We also have a bias for the Daily AI Show. Thanks, Cindy.
I want to point this out just as we sort of wrap it up, and then we'll get our final thoughts on like, do we like it? Do we not like it? I think I know where Karl's going to go on this, but we'll get that in a second. What I wanted to say is that this does cost money, right? There's a cost associated with this, and I'm just pulling up the main screen here. Your basic business starter is going to be $6 per $6 per user per month with a 1-year commitment. But crucially, that has you need to have a Gemini add-on to that, which is X amount of dollars more per month. So you need a seat inside of Google Workspace, but then you also would have to pay for the Gemini. Now, I will tell you, everything I just showed you is by using Google Labs and having Gemini and access to Google Labs. I don't pay for this. So everything I just showed you is technically not in it, but it's still the same stuff that would be in Workspace, but I do not pay any money for it. So just want to throw that out there. There are ways to access every single thing I just showed without actually paying, but you don't have that collaborative user. Like, it's not the 7 of us who have a seat, and it's not going to give us a whole lot of collaboration. There would definitely be things that'd be missing, but I wanted to make sure I pointed it out before we got to our final thoughts here, because I don't want anybody believing this is like, oh, I can use Gemini for free. Like, I mean, kind of, I did. But if you were going to use this as a business, which is what I suspect people are listening to us and wondering, there's going to be a cost to the business to do this. So you really have to decide, like, okay, is everything we just showed you in a lot more, obviously, because we can't show you everything. Is that worth $10, $20 a user a month? And more crucially, we sort of touched on this. Do I think my employees, if I'm the head, are going to use this? Because like I said, Scaled is a Google shop. But truthfully, if I'm being honest, it would take a lot to get people to change and break their old habits. Do I think going through the pain of that would actually be worth it for my company? Now, we have 25 full-time-ish, plus a lot of people on the bench who are like 1099s at Scaled. And so do I think there's value in this? 1,000%. Would I have to fight uphill pushing a boulder to get this implemented the right way with naming conventions and set us up for future success using Gemini for Google Workspace? Yeah. And that's, I think, what I feel like. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just people hate change. And I think Scale should stop using Zoom and only start using Google Meet. But as I told you at the top of the show, that is a big push. But my reasoning of it is sound. Oh, but if all our transcripts are there, we can pull them into documents, like Andy was just saying, and we can collaborate and work on those transcripts, and they wouldn't be all siloed in the Zoom.us blah blah blah, right? Anyway, that's where I'm at. I think it's worth it.
I want to jump in here, and all joking aside of like, my bias against Google, but the thing that I'm looking at here is this: when Microsoft Copilot came out, like last year, and then all the updates came out too, there's a lot of companies that are already on the Google ecosystem that got it. I would suspect probably in the Google ecosystem that some of them will get it too, right? And we also saw the routers study where a certain percentage, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini. The thing is, for both companies, doesn't matter who, the problem that I saw with Copilot, and I guarantee it's the same thing with Google, is that, they show you all the stuff that you could do. But the problem is, to take your thing one step further, Brian, is that there is no education piece to educate the people to use it. That's the problem, is that there's a reason why so many companies are asking us. I was like, our company to, hey, could you help us train on Microsoft Copilot? I was like, why didn't Microsoft? No, they give us a bunch of pages and some videos, but we don't. I was like, and Google's the same thing. Here's a bunch of pages. Here's a bunch of videos. If you need some training, go third party, because we're too busy trying to compete with everything else. So I think that's a big issue, is that, hey, you can get it. Sure, you're going to get some benefits, but you have to, in addition to getting people to use it, you have to educate them on how to use it. So there has to be champions already that want to use it. And then you have to set up this huge change management to get people to use it and continuously use it to get the return, right? You can't just, get excited for a month or two and then only 5% of people use it.
Right.
Like, here's an example. ChatGPT for enterprise, Benevity's rollout. And it's funny because like the whole company got it for like 3 months for free. No problems. It was like, exciting, amazing. I didn't use the enterprise. I used mine because all my things were there and I know how to set my privacy and so on. The problem was I used ChatGPT for enterprise maybe twice. Out of the top users in our company of over 1,000 people who have this, I used ChatGPT, custom GPT, like maybe twice, 3 times. I was still number 58 of the ranking of all the people using it. And I used it twice. That tells you, right? It's like, and this is a company that is pushing AI. Imagine companies that aren't real. Like, so when we're talking about deployment, it's like there's a whole bunch of other things that happen to the point, no matter how good the tool or how terrible, it doesn't matter. You still need to educate. And I think that's where Google and Microsoft are really, really coming up short. And it's really unfortunate because that really hinders the adoption of AI in general.
So
1,000%. I think that's a show topic, by the way.
Absolutely.
Change management. Yeah.
And if you are a business in that situation, you're trying to make that decision, go ahead and reach out to us. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube. You can reach out to the dailyaishow.com or the dailyaishow@gmail.com. We'll have better email soon, but we would love to hear from you in that context. I believe that we can help. The other thing that is a big difference that I just want to highlight, and I know that this is now our longest show. This is our longest show ever, guys. Yeah. Google, if you have explored the Copilot within Office 365, you have to buy it for the year. You don't get to cancel it for that whole year. You're just paying $360 for that one seat for the 365 days beyond that. Google lets you do it month by month. So you could actually experiment with people and you get a discount if you pay for the year, but you can experiment with people and cancel that.
Yeah. Jyunmi, Andy, last thoughts. So we'll see if we can wrap this up. But last thoughts. I don't want to cut anybody out here. So Jyunmi, I mean, like, would you use it?
Oh, absolutely. And that is, and I think that's the root thing here is it's an ecosystem environment thing, like Andy was pointing out. That I think that's my main takeaway after testing it out for the show is I do stuff in Workspace. That's my preferred over Office. But
me too.
Yeah, but since it's right there, I can just click on it. I can ask it stuff. Do I think it's terribly useful for me in particular yet? We'll see. But having it right there, right in your face, at your fingertips, available for, it's like, oh, well, instead of putting it into going over to OpenAI, or instead of putting my question into a browser window, I can just ask the question right there. And hopefully it will give me better insights into my particular files.
Andy, you want to take us home, wrap up the week?
Yeah, my final point would be for individual users who have a Gmail account. I think you might, in order to get the full suite and Gemini side panel, you might have to have a Google One, a subscription. It's not terribly expensive. It's probably on the order of $8 a month or something. I don't know the specific details, but I'm using that. I'm not a part of a corporation anymore. It's not being supplied to me anymore, but it's relatively inexpensive. And I think you're going to find it very useful. But I just provide the caveat that it's only been available in my Google Workspace for 7 or 8 or 10 days. And I've already stumbled upon it and used it productively. So I think that as time proceeds, it's going to get more and more useful.
All right, we'll leave it there. Hey, like Beth said, check out the dailyaishow.com. We are getting very close to our newsletter, our first newsletter coming out. If you would like to be one of the early adopters of that, we have some really cool special things that we're going to be sending out to probably our first, 100 people. And we do not expect it to take very long to get to 100 subscribers on our newsletter. So go to the Daily AI Show and sign up. You're not going to get a newsletter just yet. You'll be one of the first people to get it then when it comes out. And if you're one of the early, let's say, we'll say it right now. If you're one of the first 99 people to sign up for our newsletter, we're also got something special in mind that you guys are really, really going to love. So go check that out. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with all sorts of new topics, maybe talking about change management on one of those days, because I think that's going to be a great discussion. But regardless, we'll be back all next week talking about new AI stuff. So we'll see you guys then. Thank you. Goodbye.
Aloha.